Acharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Parantam De Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratemeti Mochideva Vibhagine Vyomavada Vyapatadhyaya Dakshinamurtiya Namaha Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharantam Agocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satyaguru Pranatoshmaham. Nice, huh? If I keep doing it every day next year, I don't need to read anymore. One more year of practice. We are getting there, Samadhi, on just a few pages, and then I think, and then we're going to begin to the end of this, I think. This is the last difficult one, I guess. So. Okay, let's go through this one here. The names we use as nouns are in fact intransitive or intransitive?
Intransitive.
Huh?
Intransitive.
Intransitive, yeah. The names we use as nouns are in fact intransitive verbs. But our language conditions us to reverse the true position and encourage the illusion that existence is a property of the objects. So when we say that the chair exists and the jiva exists and the microphone exists and so on, so we are giving existence to certain objects. And there are four manifold instead of one. So we see as if there will be, as if there are many existences. To make the consequence of the self being affected by objects plainer, consider personal identity. If objects were real, we would have to regard ourselves as the body-mind in whatsoever form. If the body was existence, and if I am existence, so I could take any body for existence. I could say, I exist, you are my body, you're my body. I could identify with anybody. When we use the first personal pronoun, we are always referring to the unchanging self, not to the personal self. Whether we know it or not. So we say I. But it's just the self shining behind this I, the only self there is. For there is only one I. When we page through a photo album, we say, there I was. I was. Oh, I was. When I was a child, is when I was, I. The I remains, our existence is intact through time, with all modifications of the body and the mind. There I am when I got married, etc., etc. The I is the substratum for all change that occur and that are captured in the photographs. Without that substratum, the I, we would have no continuity and no identity. Right? We would see, who are you? I don't know. I was something yesterday, and then last week I was something else, so I need to make some assessment here. I will check all cells of my body, every thoughts that have changed, My digestion system is a little bit more congested, so give me some time and I'm going to report to you who I am now, what I am. Because the construct is changing from a moment to a moment, never remaining the same. But we don't have that problem because we know that we are the I that does not change, regardless of all changes that occur to the body. Without that substratum, we would have no continuity, no identity. We would lose our sense of identity. So we are that background, changeless background of knowingness that is not subject to time and change. Otherwise, we cannot know anything, as we asserted this morning. How can we know anything if the very knower changed? When it changed, the knower that knew something is no longer there, and then the knowledge is lost because the knower has changed. So we are that which is always ever present and never modified by any contact with experience. We could not say I if this I was not constant, for there would be no connection between any two manifestations of this I. Change would be absolute. The only thing would be change, and there would be nothing that would be able to, we could call myself. Everything is mithya. That is only impermanence. Therefore, there is no self. You see the idea, where this idea of no self, not non-existence comes from? It's all impermanence. Everything is change. Therefore, there is nothing real. There is no self. Change only occurs against the background of that which never changes. The second consequence of taking the world to be real is that the Veda could no longer be considered a valid means of knowledge. We might say, why not? So what? What's the problem?
Yeah.
No problem. Valid. It's not valid anymore. If the Vedas and Vedanta is not really real, not to be considered a valid means of knowledge, a valid means of liberation, one say, who cares? I enjoy samsara in any case. What advantage accrues to me when the Veda being considered a valid means of knowledge, although it may not be immediately apparent? The invalidation of the Veda as a means of knowledge would leave us in inescapable darkness and despair. There will be no way out, no exit, meaning to say no solution for the human drama. There's nothing that can, resolve this crisis of identity that's all the time, freaked out and bound to objects and feeling that it's changing and bound by time and so on, and having no means to neutralize or remove these wrong notions, or the very roots of suffering, let's say.
This reminds me of someone saying about whether God was existing, and he said, well, when I look around and I see so much suffering, then I renounce God. That God cannot exist because it couldn't be like this.
Right.
It reminds me of this.
Right.
Inescapable darkness.
Yeah, inescapable darkness. We just say, there is no way around. God, we know by now that God is not really the answer, because the God presented by all religions, structures, do not make much sense. The only religious structure that makes a little bit more sense, which is Buddhism, they remove the concept of God. So we don't have God, we don't have a proper means of knowledge. So we are just, it's our, how you say the word? It's It's the fate. It's the fate of human. And then people come and say, oh yes, of course. Because Jesus, hell. Hell is here. You ever heard that one? Hell is in here. There is no such a thing as hell somewhere else. It's people's experience. They don't find a way. They don't find any means or any light at the end of the tunnel or something. There is hope, you know. They begin by projecting that there will be light and love in paradise. And then later on they may be questioning, all through they may be questioning paradise, you know. It's a very superficial thought, this thought that I'm going to go to heaven and everything is going to be okay. There was this guy living in Bombay in my days. He was a very smart man and a businessman. He used to deal with silk. And he opened a business, and then when he was well established, he found a very beautiful wife, you know, rich wife as well, and then they got together, and then he said, I will grow the business, and then we will have 2 sons. And then they got 2 sons. They came together. They were twins, no? Twins. And they start growing, and after some time they start helping the father with his business. The business was really expanding. And then after decades, these 2 boys were the pride of this man, the business and the 2 boys. And when they were being born, he said, I want to keep my sons, the most loved thing. Ishwara gave me 2 beautiful boys. I want to keep them in my mind all the time. You know, they are the love of my life. But the guy was a businessman, very smart. And at the same time, I want to secure a place in paradise. I have this huge attachment to my children, but I want to secure a place in paradise. And then he said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a special name that I'm going to be able to accomplish both ends. He called one Ram and the other Krishna. Mm-hmm. So Ram, Krishna, Ram, Krishna. And then I'm going to always keep them with me, and that's going to help me to, you know, find my way to heaven. When he was old, he was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. And then he was, oh, thanks God, I have my children, and they are the pathway to paradise, to God, because I'm all the time saying Ram Krishna, Ram Krishna. So when he was about to die, the doctor said, oh, it's about a few days now, you just stay close to them. First thing he said, tell the boys to come, close the shop, I want them next to me. I don't want to miss it. In India they say that when you die, whatsoever you hold in your mind manifests in your next life. He wants to go to one of those heavens, very high heaven, and he wants to keep the name of Ram and Krishna in his mind. He said, send the boys immediately, I don't want to take any chance. So the boys come into the hospital, he's very happy. He calls the boys, he holds one in one hand, the other in the other hand, and he kept saying, Ram Krishna, Ram Krishna, Rama Krishna, Rama Krishna, Rama Krishna. All the time, the only thought in mind was that. And then at a certain moment, there was another thought that entered and said, who are you who are going to take care of the bookings? And then he died. In a moment, he thought about the business, and then a concern came, who are you who are going to take care of the books? You know, bookkeeping and the money and so on. And then he missed his ticket to that heaven. He was a businessman, he was smart, he was keeping the right thought, but in the last moment, the vasana betrayed him. So we cannot deceive Ishwara. No matter how smart, we can, there's no chance. So if we don't have the Veda, we don't have any way out of suffering. We will be left to inescapable darkness and despair. The verse 1, we are told that perception, our usual means of knowledge, cannot help us to know the self. It can only tell us something about objects, not the self. Inference is usually considered another means of knowledge, but it's totally based upon perception and cannot be separated from perception. So inference depends on perception. Bottom line is everything we know is a function of perception. Without perception, there is no knowledge. How can we know the knowledge, the self, if the self is not an object of perception and neither knowledge, and therefore knowledge? What means of knowledge do I have then that can reveal to us the self, which is our true nature and the nature of limitless security and joy? So what is the means of knowledge that we'll have? Only one, the words of the Upanishads unfold by a proper teacher. If these means of knowledge were removed, we would be restricted to what we can know by perception. You see? Or inference. If we don't have a means of knowledge, we are trapped in samsara. We are limited by what we know by perception and inference, which is based on perception. Anything that we know in here is also conditioned by our past knowledge, past impressions. So we have past impression and then we read the new contact, the new perceptive impressions or sense impression from here. They have to be interpreted by our past. There is nothing new. It's just a recycling vasanas, desire, thoughts, actions, vasanas, desire, thoughts, actions. So that's why Ishvara took pity and said, hey, these guys are trapped. I have assembled them with all the perceptive organs extroverted, and there is no way they are going to understand what's going on here and understand they all come from me and they are all but me alone. And they should relax. There is no need to be concerned. So Ishvara, understanding that, has revealed us the scriptures. So without the scriptures, you look around, we see people. You see, oh my God, how are they going to get out of this samsara? No. They go from birth to death, repeating those same cycles of activities. Chasing, trying to find a way to squeeze a little bit of joy here and there. After a certain number of years, one is so worn out by suffering. A lot of people say, no, I'm depressed. I can't take it anymore. I don't want to deal with the world anymore. Give me something to sleep. That's when Gabriel said that was the great joke. So, if nothing works, we can sleep, right, Gabriel? Because it's sad to see. It's very sad. People trying to squeeze a little relief from suffering here and there. That would be the consequence of the statement, the scriptures do not work. It's not a proper means of knowledge. It would leave us like, fuck. And now what? Now what? There's no way out. We are trapped in samsara forever.
I'm so happy I'm sitting here.
Yeah? Yeah, you should. We all should. Okay. What means of knowledge do we have then? Only one. The words of Upanishads unfold by a proper teacher. If these means of knowledge were removed, we would be restricted to what we can know by perception. That is, we will be cast into the world of objects that come and go, and we'll find ourselves numbered among these countless passing phenomena, unable to transcend them. So we'll be trapped in the past. If we don't have this knowledge, we have to depend on perception and inference, which is just a constant recycling of our vasanas. We will be repeating ourselves ad infinitum. We would be trapped in duality. There would be no escape from the pains of birth and death, from the desires and fears that haunt our lives. The third, hedonism. Hedonism is pursuit of pleasure. How about that?
Living for pleasure.
Living for pleasure. Huh?
From the Greek terms, hedonis.
Yeah? Oh, nice.
Can you say it again? I didn't hear that.
Hedonism.
Heavens.
It's hedonism. Hedonism.
He likes pleasures.
Hedonism. Okay. Hedonism. Hedonism. I will call it pursuit of pleasure. It's so sad. The sad thing about this pursuit of pleasure that characterizes our age is rooted in the belief that objects are the source of happiness. Objects are all there is. The only pleasure we find in the objects, and there is no pleasure in the subject. That is the sad thing, because it's a total misunderstanding. We have the happiness we see in our own nature, and we are trapped and suffering. In other words, it's rooted in perception as the sole means of knowledge. Because we perceive only objects, we don't perceive the subject. We are the subject, but we don't perceive it. It's not below our line of objectification. So, the French thinker and writer Albert Camus believed that we can know nothing beyond this world of objects. And he found this limitation an intolerable cruelty. That's very nice, huh? The guy is very smart, he has a beautiful mind, and he just analyzes the experience of the human condition, and he comes to the conclusion that there is nothing we can know beyond the realm of object. There is only object, and we can just spend our time looking to objects. And he found it very cruel to come to that recognition. He counseled what he called metaphysical rebellion. This is very nice. A metaphysical rebellion, which in effect is nothing more than anger and despair over the unrelieved alienation that comes from thinking the world is real. So the world is real. All there is the world of object. There is no such a thing as the self. Yeah, because somehow the mind cannot see the self. It can see only objects, right? So if we believe only what we see and we know, we have to deny the existence of the self. Okay, the self is the knower, but it cannot be seen by the jiva. or by the scientists, or by the philosophers, that we are but one alienation that comes from thinking that the world is real, and that we are but one more among the objects that come and go for reasons we cannot even imagine. Don't know, I think, what the hell I'm doing here? I'm just a little speck of dust among infinity of others, and I don't know where I came from, where I'm going to go, what I'm doing here, what is the purpose, what is the meaning of my life. And then comes a nice group there in the United States. I think it was born in the United States. It's called it's an educational system on personal development called Landmark Education. Have you heard?
Of course.
Yeah.
The forum was originally called EST.
Yeah.
EST, and then they changed it to the forum. It's known as Landmark.
Yeah,
Landmark Forum.
Yeah, the forum. Yeah. And then this says life is meaningless. And it's meaningless that is meaningless. Some people are, so what, All there is objects, and I better go around trying to squeeze some juice while I can. Later on, when the body gets old, it's more difficult to squeeze juice from objects. My father had such an attachment to life, and he always wanted to going all over the place trying to find a new girlfriend and so on. Now he's 88, and the body is weak, the mind is also weak. He cannot walk much. For the first time he starts thinking, you know what, I was sure I want to live until 125, but I don't think so anymore. Why? The body cannot squeeze any more juice. So the juice is not much. And comes a point that not even that little bit of red wine we can drink, because the digestion system cannot take.
You didn't finish the idea about
Which
what happened with the wine?
The wine?
Yeah, with the red wine.
The red wine is when we finish the seminar, we're going to open some French and Italian bottles.
Okay, I see.
This is the metaphysical rebellion. It's it's a despair over the circumstance of living as a human being lost in the universe, having no clue of what's the purpose of my life. For delivering these ideas to his contemporaries, this dark message, he was awarded a Nobel Prize. Soon afterwards, the car in which he was a passenger crashed in a tree and ended his life before he could properly contemplate and assimilate the vision of non-duality. Maybe he could, meet the scriptures, meet Yani or Mahatma or Yogi and say, hey, you have a great mind. Try this, And then he could, but somehow his Prarabdha karma was like to crash and die in a car accident. No, not long before his death, Camus is said to have consulted Jean Klein, a teacher of Vedanta living in Paris. Oh, this is nice. He is reported to have remarked at the conclusion of this meeting, the guy, Camus, who died, said, "Oh no, I can't believe it." That is, Camus could not accept that the declarations of the Upanishads could be true. So there are consequences considering the Veda an invalid means of knowledge. If we doubt it, we only need to look around to see the consequence. People who knows that life is what it is, and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no hope. There is no means to come out happy of this life. We begin somehow a little happy when we are young. You see, young, we are a little bit happy. And then our happiness starts fading. And then it's very difficult to come out with a beautiful smile in your face and, thank you, Ishvara. The third consequence of considering the world to be real and is that the Veda could be a liar. The rishis would be liars who create the Veda. That is the means of knowing the self. Who create the Veda? That is the means for knowing the self. In the verse 1, the teacher is saluted as the self. This means that the self, pure awareness, has given us the science of self-knowledge through the Upanishads. We should not confuse this knowledge with religious doctrines that claim the sanction of divine revelation. So this knowledge was not something given to us like in the religious doctrines, which was originated by someone or channeled by someone or passed on. So this is a revealed means of knowledge. It was revealed direct from the self or Ishvara to those individuals whose mind was totally receptive and contemplative, and they were asking fundamental questions such as what I'm doing here, what is the purpose of my life? No. What is the way out? What am I? Who am I? What is this light shining behind my eyes, my mind? What is the eye behind the eye? And so on. When people ask those questions, existence provides the answers. It's just a question of demanding it, and the supply comes. It should not be confused, this knowledge, with religion doctrine that claim the sanction of divine revelation. Individual experience of unusual static states of consciousness come under the heading of mysticism, which is personal and subject to the percipient's interpretation. Okay? Any epiphany or mystical experience is only as good as one's interpretation of that, right? If we have a lot of information about mysticism, or we read a lot of books about people who have all this kind of epiphanies and so on, and the meanings of that according to those people. So we have some information here that's going to help us to interpret. But just imagine someone like Ramji. The guy is a businessman, he does not care anything about except those things that we know he used to care. And then he goes to the post office, and then out of the blue he begins having all these amazing epiphanies. The universe disappearing within his third eyes, and everything becomes nothing, and then the oneness of everything, non-dual, all kinds of crazy things. And the guy does not have any knowledge about epiphanies and esoteric mystical experience. So what do we do with it? Yeah? So those kind of static or mystical experience, they are just as good as our interpretation, and our interpretation depends on some knowledge we have there, some information we have there, directly or directly information, direct knowledge or indirect knowledge. These interpretations are sometimes received by others as authoritative, and thus religions are born. Somebody interprets some experience, say this is what it is, and by the way, I heard it from God directly. And now it's a question of dogmatic faith. You need to believe it, otherwise you're going to pay the consequence. and you're going to be said to be unbeliever, and you pay in heaven, in hell. Vedanta is not mysticism, but neither is it a philosophy produced by human thought. So it's not the thought as a byproduct of interpretation of mystical experience, and neither by philosophical analysis. Vedanta is none of those things. Philosophy, like mysticism, is dependent upon perception. That is, it originates through a subject experiencing objects, internal objects, very, very lofty thoughts, brilliant thoughts, philosophical thoughts. We try to understand the nature of things, nature of object, nature of words, nature of reality. So we can play with objects, very subtle objects, thought objects, or we can play with material objects, and then we are in the fields of science. But any kind of this philosophy or religion is originated by knowledge, perception. Vedanta makes use of perception, but it's not enclosed by it nor dependent upon it. As we follow the logic of Vedanta, we may be liable to mistake its conclusions as originating in human reason, which cannot be separated from objective knowledge. So how can we make it easy here? Vedanta makes use of perception. So in which way Vedanta makes use of perception? It's a teaching methodology, it's a body of knowledge, and it's a knowledge based on our own experience, not properly examined. So it's an object, our own experience. It brings to our attention a proper reading of our own experience. So it's based on perception. It's analyzing with the human experience and bring to light. Listen, this is your experience. But somehow you have developed these and these and these notions that are not really in harmony with your experience. If you analyze deeply your experience, you're going to come to a different conclusion. Instead, because you are not analyzing it properly, you're drawing the conclusion that, you are object. And you're getting bound and attached and dependent on objects. So it's based on perception. It has its origin in perception. Vedanta makes use of perception, but it's not enclosed by it. Neither it depends on it. As we follow the logic of Vedanta, we may be liable to mistake its conclusions as originating in human reason, which cannot be separated from objective knowledge. Human reason is always in reference to objects. Every knowledge is objective knowledge from the standpoint of human reason. The distinction here is that Vedanta is not a knowledge coming from any individual in reference to any object of experience in the knowledge. The knowledge Vedanta comes altogether from a different order of realities, a revealed knowledge, the knowledge that has always been present, which is not coming from the human mind as a byproduct of perception or byproduct of connection or contacting, experiencing, knowing objects. It's coming directly from here. While logic supports Vedanta, logic does not inform it. Right? Logic is the support of Vedanta. It's based on the logic of the individual, but logic does not originate it. It does not inform it. There is simply no way a human being could arrive at self-knowledge through reflection upon objects of perception. You understand the point here? How can we come to this conclusion if every knowledge we have is going south? And this conclusion is a conclusion of that which is the very essence, essential, fundamental nature of everything. We don't have any knowledge to reflect the self directly.
The basic example of that is that you cannot pull yourself up by pulling your hairs up.
Yeah, that's very nice.
It
Yeah,
doesn't work. You need something outside of you.
yeah, that's very nice. Thank you. Beautiful. There's no way to get to that knowledge through contemplation upon objects of perception, nor through another's mystical, subjective experience, because such experience cannot be transmitted and the truth tested. Every subject mystical experience. Why all this mystical spirituality is of very little help? It cannot be tested. It's totally subjective. It's somehow the gurus say, hey, I had this incredible mystical experience. And then everybody's like, me too, me too, me too. You say, okay, I'm going to describe it very, very carefully. I'm going to show the colors and the fragrance of it and the feel of it. And then everybody's there having orgasm about those descriptions. First of all, it's a description that is one's interpretation of an experience. If the same experience that happens for 2-3 people, there will be different descriptions, because it's one's past experience is the only data we have to describe an experience. Second, it's a totally subjective to the individual jiva. So how he can pass something that is not real in the sense that it's subject knowledge, it's a subject projection of something that was very subtle, like a distorted sort of mental experience. So there's no way we can get anything from somebody talk about mysticism and this and that. How you can get that? Okay, it's good. You tell me everything about that. I love it. So give it to me. I want to have the same experience. Nobody can. No, the experience is mine. It's my own fantasy. It's my own project. It's my own illusion. It's my own, superimposition. There is simply no way a human being could arrive at self-knowledge. And not through another mystical experience, because such experience cannot be transmitted and the truth cannot be tested, which is not the case with Vedanta. Vedanta is science. Why it's science? Provided we have a qualified student, we have a proper means of knowledge, and someone who can unfold the knowledge to a certain degree of understanding, and then it is going to produce a result. It may take a little time, a little work on our side, until it clicks, but it works. So science is something that you can bring to the lab and test, and then you can come to the same result over and over again. That's not the case with mysticism or any other mystical kind of explanation or means of knowledge. Self-knowledge comes to this from the self. Indeed, it is the self. We are now posed on the precipice of the most profound and radical fact. We are not human beings, we are the self. I mean, we should be happy actually, right? We should not be. Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to fall and my sense of identity is crumbling or dropping. So you are losing something it's a drag to push around, to go here and there, and you gain your very freedom. Why to be attached to that? We are the self. This is what all of the previous negations were leading us to realize. Anything and everything we can perceive is not the self. Anything that we can experience, know and perceive is not the self. To begin with, later on we understand this too is the self. Everything is just me. It's just a projection on myself. If it were the self that is, if the world were real, then the pure awareness that has given us Vedanta would be a liar. So there is only one self, and the objects are not real, and the scriptures are not lying. Therefore, there is hope. And we should be happy that we came to a Vedanta class, because it tells a lot about us, good merits, good karma. So yeah, we are like the cream of the cream, right? Crème de la crème in French. It's a French expression, right? Crème de la crème. The crème brulee, even sweeter. If this were so, if the Vedas and Vedanta and the Rishi would be lying, then we would be forever barred from knowing the truth. We would be locked inside our sense-based minds where doubts never cease, forever fretting about what is real and not real and what to do about life. Anxiety would be perpetual. By compelling us to consider the consequence of taking the world to be real, the teacher has shown us the alternative to Vedanta. Darkness, delusion, and despair occasionally alleviated by moments of pleasure. That's sometimes I like to say, no, I mean, we suffer a lot in samsara, but there are some moments of pleasure here and there. Otherwise, forget it. Otherwise, everybody would be committed suicidal right and left, right? Darkness, delusion, despair occasionally alleviate by moments of pleasure, and with life ending in old age, and that. Why not? I mean, we could just begin like a child and then grow old, and then we'll have a lot of wisdom, and then we start growing young again, and then we die as a baby. It would be much more fair, right?
Benjamin Button.
Yeah?
Remember Benjamin Button?
Yes.
It's possible, it can be done.
Yes. Well, I'm still waiting for the magic pill. A pill to reverse aging, you know? Have you heard about that one? It's there in the New Age world, the magic pill to reverse aging.
That would be the real disaster. Overcrowding. People have to kill each other.
Who wants to be a baby again?
We are really loading up
Really
babies.
not. I don't want to go through all this shit again. I don't take the pill. I prefer to get really, really old and then it's over.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, I wish I would have the wisdom of my old age, but the energy of my wealth, my youth."
Yeah.
So why not to go old, and then start, now I'm 65. In 10 years, I'm going to be 55. 55, I'm going to be full on. And then 45, and then 20, and then a little babe. And then that little bird comes and take the babe and bring it back to God. It will be a nice picture, a more fair kind of lifestyle.
This way it's urging you to wake up.
Yeah.
It's much better.
Yeah. Even the consolation of an imaginary heaven in the afterlife is excluded, because even God could be a liar, a proposition considered by Descartes, and reject more through faith in a perfect creator than through reasoned arguments. But Vedanta is supported by reasoned argument that the self could be a liar. Suppose that the self has perceptions that can be judged true or false. That's very nice. How we can judge the self if the self does not have any objective knowledge, it does not have perceptual instruments, does not contact the world, does not collect objective knowledge. Therefore, how can we judge it? There is nobody to judge, because it's one without a second, moreover. By whom? Who would judge the self? and based on what criteria? But the self has no content, no perceptions. Have you ever thought about that? Who can judge me? What are you judging me? Based on what? I have never done anything. I know nothing. No. I don't exist in time. I never changed. And I'm all over the place, and it's only me. I mean, how can you judge me? Very simple fact. And then the mind is judging me. Hey, give me a break. Come on, understand here. I cannot be judged. I'm innocent. I have never done anything. I never thought a single thought. And based on what criteria? But the self has no content, no perception, which is what Vedanta means when it claims self is beyond what exists and what does not exist. It is no perfect creator God, whose integrity requires that we accept the world of perception as being real. Such an acceptation is shown to be baseless, and the following verse reinforces the point. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be done with verse number 69, 70, the next, 71, the next, and we're going to still have to crank through some of this concept of reality, no reality. And then the last set that is home is the very juicy one. It's going to talk about the self and the life of freedom that's waiting for us, with the limitless joy and happiness and security and so on.